Hi, it's been another productive few weeks working on Lumbermill, a factory builder and management game set deep in the forest. I've done some more rewriting of old systems, with the entire factory system now working a lot more effectively. I've also added an entire new layer to the forest, which I'll be expanding over the next few weeks. For those of you that have seen my videos before, you'll know that the factory system is a major part of the game. Logs are transported on conveyors and manipulated by machines to produce products which your mill can sell for amber, the currency of the game. This was one of the very first systems I built for the game, and as conveyor belt systems are surprisingly complex, there were quite a few things I overlooked in the original design. The most visually obvious of these was the stop-start motion, but it also just wasn't very optimized, which could become a problem later in the game. In the new design, there were a few things I wanted to improve on. Firstly, objects had to move continuously along conveyor belts. Secondly, there needed to be support for conveyor belts to have inclines, and finally, the amount of code I needed to write to add new machines had to be minimized. The way I solved these problems was as follows. Each individual chain of factory objects or conveyors is identified as a single entity. Each factory object or machine in the chain can have up to 4 parents or children. Inventory objects, like logs, then move themselves along conveyors, adjusting their speed to match the factory object that they're currently on. When a log reaches the center of a factory object, it triggers an unlock event working backwards from the end of the conveyor chain back to the start. The machine then gives the item a list of instructions or transformations to carry out, such as moving to a particular position. This was largely inspired by the way Factorio handles things, although there's not that much information about that around. At first, the implementation had a few issues, but once I'd gotten to the bottom of those, I got smooth movement along the conveyors working. The problem here is there's some weird jagged snapping caused by the pixel perfect component I wrote to handle movement. I slowed the movement speed down to get a closer look at what's happening. It looked like there's a staircase pattern being followed which isn't isometric, so I adjusted the pixel perfect movement component to follow the isometric pattern of 2 in the X for every 1 in the Y. I was actually quite surprised to find that worked really effectively, so I upped the speed, made some upgrades to the movement component, including allowing non-pixel perfect movement, and this was the result. On the left we have smooth movement, and on the right we have pixel perfect movement. I hugely prefer the smooth movement myself, as it appears at the natural frame rate, but let me know in the comments which you prefer. Either way though, the game now has smooth conveyors, which I am super pleased about. Next, I added the ability to randomize conveyor belt speeds, as objects check the speed of whatever conveyor they're on. This can vary hugely from conveyor to conveyor if I want it to. I set it to 75% variation at first, just to see what it looks like at extreme numbers. This looks ridiculous, but I think it demonstrates the new conveyor system really well. I then went all in and set it to 100,000, and the results were disappointing. I should have expected this though. The number I've settled on for now is 15% variation. This gives a more natural appearance to object movement and essentially sets the speed of each conveyor to anywhere from 15% below the average speed to 15% above the average speed. Now I just need to adapt all the old machine code to work with the new system. Doing all this rewriting has given me some time to think about where I want the game to go from here, and I've realised the game is sort of at the end of an extended prototype stage. The game is playable to some degree, and now I need to get it to the alpha stage. I spent a lot of time over the last few weeks planning out what that will look like. As most of the original scope has now been implemented to some level, I moved to my feature creep Trello board, and I've got some pretty cool plans for exactly where I'll go from here. So, the first thing I need to do is add a new layer to the forest, the underground. I added some temporary buttons to the bar at the bottom of the screen to allow me to fade the forest layer in and out. The first attempt looked like this, kind of what I'm after, but the ground tiles have a weird grid pattern appearing. To solve that, I drew the tiles that will comprise the underground layer, and separated out the forest edges from the grass tiles, as the overlap of multiple forest edges was creating the grid. I set up the underground layer prefab, and after a lot of refactoring to make the new layer system work, got the top layer to fade out cleanly, revealing the underground layer. The forest is now divided into separate layers, which just keeps the hierarchy nice and tidy in Unity, and allows for entire layers to be moved at once. That's useful for doing stuff like this. I added a lift animation to the fade to make it feel like the top layer is being picked up to reveal the underground. The first attempt was maybe a bit too big, but I moved on to adding some details first. I drew a bunch of different rocks, some tall monolithic rocks and some other small scattered rocks. I imported them into the project and created a component to randomize the current sprite from a set of options. Once I'd got that onto the rock object and configured it, this is what the rocks looked like. I didn't like the monolithic style rocks as it didn't seem accurate for an underground area, so I removed them entirely and raised the proportion of rocks to make them appear more frequently. This is what all that looks like. While the factory in the forest has smooth running conveyors that can all be lifted away to reveal an underground layer with rocks scattered around. There are more details I'll be adding to this in the next video, and it will become quite a significant area in the game, which I'll be revealing soon. If you have any ideas of what the underground layer is going to be used for, I'd love to hear your take on things in the comments. If you'd like the game when it comes out, it's available for wishlisting on Steam. The link to that is in the description. Special thanks for this video, of course, go to my patrons. In particular, I'd like to thank Ismail, Nova, Pepper Trollman, Sheshpesh, Julian, Phil, Capivol, Nick, Ethan Hart, Alex, Cameron E, and Myrtle. If you'd like to become a patron yourself, the link to that is also in the description and on the screen now. There are some cool Lumbermill related rewards, including copies of the game when it's out. That's all for this video. If you liked it, do remember to subscribe, and I shall see you next time for a big update on the underground layer. Cheers for watching.